Hello and welcome friends to this session on rural marketing. Up till now we have discussed the definition of rural marketing, and we also discussed in detail the nuances involved in different phrases which have been used in this particular definition. We also talked about how rural areas are demarcated, on what basis do the various organizations demarcate rural areas. For example, we read about Planning Commission, which does not exist anymore and has now been replaced by Niti Aayog. We also discussed the National Sample Survey Organization definition of what rural markets are. And we also talked about the Reserve Bank of India's definition of rural market. And please understand that there are significant differences between these different standards used for demarcating rural areas by different organizations. And if you go to different firms also, you might find that in similar fashion they may also have different criteria to demarcate the rural markets. But then, despite these subtle differences and despite different firms, different marketers having slightly different standards for demarcating rural markets, you would still be using almost the similar kind of tools and strategies in the rural markets. So the criteria for deciding whether a particular area is a rural area or not may differ across different organizations, but then once the organization has decided that okay fine, this particular area is a rural area, the tools, the marketing tools used, the strategies used to cater to that particular market will be same across different organizations. So now let us talk a little bit about why do you need to study rural marketing. Now many times this question might be posed to you, this may also come up in the exams, as to what is the utility of studying rural market or rural marketing for a undergraduate student of business administration. What is the reason you are being provided this particular subject as one of the compulsory subjects in your BBA course? See, there are so many reasons. Let us discuss all these reasons, and you would find once we have completed this discussion that rural marketing is now offering a very lucrative opportunities to all the marketers, be it the FMCG sector, be it the automobile sector, be it the consumer durables, be it the service industries also. Rural markets, they offer a very lucrative opportunity to all these marketers, all these sectors and all these marketers. Why? Let us have a look. One reason why we need to study rural marketing is that the population size is very large. If you look at the latest data, you would find out that out of almost 130 crore people which we have in our country, 83 crore, that is 67% of the total population, still lives in areas that can be categorized as rural areas. And this forms almost 67% of the overall population that we have in our country. So naturally, this offers a really good and attractive opportunity because of the sheer number of the customers which are available in rural markets. Now, this is not, however, the only reason why we are studying rural marketing. You should also understand that rural markets are now demonstrating a higher growth rate than the urban markets. For example, I have taken up this example. As far as the fast moving consumer goods segment is concerned, you would note that the major players in this particular segment in India are HUL, Dabur, now Patanjali of course, and Procter & Gamble. So in this particular sector also, it has been seen that the rural markets have grown by almost 70% per year. And this is the compound rate of growth. do we mean by this? This means that, let's say, I'm just giving you an example to make you understand this better. Suppose in 2019 the sales in the rural markets were, let's say, 100 rupees. In 2020 they would be 117 rupees. There would be an increase of almost 17% in the overall sales. So you can understand that this rural market is growing at a relatively very fast pace. In fact, if you start comparing it with the urban markets, you would find that the growth rate in the rural markets are far higher than in the urban markets, and that is why again rural markets become a very, very attractive option, a very, very attractive playground for all the marketers. Again, one more aspect that has to be taken into account is not only are these markets growing at a faster rate, but also they are presenting a very attractive opportunity to the marketers just because of the high market potential that they have. For example, we have seen that in FMCG sales, 40% of the FMCG sales which take place in India, they are taking place in the rural markets. So if, let's say, they are able to sell, FMCG sector is able to sell, I am again giving you a hypothetical example just to make things more comprehensible. If, let's say, the FMCG sector manages to sell goods worth rupees 100 crore in a particular year in India, 40 crore of that amount is earned only from the rural markets, which means that only the remaining 60%, or in this particular example 60 crore, is being generated from the urban markets. So this is the kind of potential that the rural markets present to you. Dabur and HUL have reported more than 40% of their annual revenue generation from rural markets. Again, this is not only the case with the FMCG sector, but if you look at the automobile sector also, the major players, Maruti Suzuki, the market leader as far as the four-wheelers are concerned, Hero Motor Corp, the big player in the two-wheeler segment, and Mahindra & Mahindra. All of them, they have been reporting selling almost 1/3 to half of their products only in the rural markets, 35 to 50%. Almost half of their sales are getting generated from the rural markets. Now, this is the kind of potential that the rural markets are presenting, and that is why it becomes really, really important for us and for marketers in general to know about the nuances in rural markets so that they can also exploit this wonderful opportunity of selling to rural customers and thereby multiplying their revenue earnings. One more reason why we need to study rural marketing is that the income levels are rising in India now. If you look at the figures from the last few years and if you start comparing, you will find that even in the rural hinterland, even in the countryside, even in the rural areas, the income levels have been increasing. There are so many reasons for that. I have quoted just a few of them. For example, one such reason is the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, which led to the institution of the Manrega scheme, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. Now, what did this scheme do? This was launched around 14-15 years ago, and it promised every rural household 100 days of work. It in fact guaranteed 100 days of work to every rural household. What do we mean by this? Every family will get work for at least 100 days, and this work will be given to them near their places of residence, which means the village that they are residing in, or maybe the panchayat area that they are residing in. Now, did it have an impact? Yes, it did have an impact. The reason is very simple, because if a poor family who is not earning much, who is barely able to make its ends meet, if that particular family is provided with a guaranteed employment for 100 days in a year, and even let's say that the minimum wage rates are, even if they are around 210 rupees per day, that particular family will for sure be earning 210 into 100 equal to 21,000 rupees in a particular year. So this is the amount by which their income levels would increase. And naturally, if there is an increase in income level, it has been found out that once the income levels rise, people tend to buy processed goods, people tend to invest in education and health, and people also tend to move from carbohydrate rich food to protein rich food. For example, a food rich in rice to a food rich in poultry, eggs, fish, milk, cheese. So when the income levels rise in our rural areas, the people tend to spend more. Their disposable incomes shall also rise, and if their disposable income rises, their discretionary income means the money which they don't have to spend on their necessity, but they can spend on their discretion. For example, the money that you spend in buying a chocolate is discretionary expenditure. Why? Because it's your call whether or not to buy a chocolate. But the money that you are spending in buying the wheat, or maybe buying the rice for your family to feed your family, that is not discretionary, because there is no choice for you. You have to buy that food to be able to sustain yourself. So the point is that when the income levels rise, the discretionary incomes also rise, and the people in rural areas, they are more likely to spend on various items. They may be items like the ones which are used on a daily basis, FMCG items, or maybe they might want to invest more in health. But whatever the case is, ultimately they are going to spend more, and this bodes really well for the marketers, because now, since the rural customer is going to spend more, they are more likely to sell their product, and they are more likely to obtain acceptability of their product. They are more likely to increase their sales to the rural customers. Again, another such scheme which has caused increase in the income levels is the direct benefit transfer. Now, what happens in direct benefit transfer? The money is directly paid to the beneficiary by linking it at times with Aadhaar, and directly it is paid into their accounts. Now, what earlier used to happen was used to be a lot of corruption, and the money which the various subsidies that the government gives to the rural folks, they didn't used to reach the rural folks, because they used to be siphoned off by the middlemen, by the corrupt middlemen, including the corrupt officials, including the landlord, and including the corrupt shopkeepers also. But now that money, or whatever the subsidies the government is giving away to the people in the rural areas, that particular subsidy is reaching directly, is getting credited directly into their bank accounts, which means since there is less leakage of the subsidy amount, the beneficiary would have more money available with him, because now he does not need to worry about the subsidy getting leaked or being siphoned off by some corrupt middleman. He'll get the whole subsidy amount. Naturally, this would increase his disposable income, and he might start purchasing items which earlier he never used to purchase, or he might increase his discretionary expenditure. Again, a very recent scheme which has come up is which came up in probably the 2018-19 budget, is the PM Kisan Samman Nidhi, wherein the government has earlier, the initial provision was that those who are owning less than 2 acres, those farmers, they will be provided, they will be given a subsidy of rupees 2,000 in 3 installments. which means basically 2000 into 3 installments, basically rupees 6000 in a particular year. So naturally, if the income of a family is increasing by rupees 6000 per year, naturally they are going to spend it somewhere. And now this becomes a very good opportunity for those marketers who are worried about the saturation that the urban markets have reached, and they're looking for new avenues to sell their products. So now they can come to the rural markets, sell their products to the customers here in the rural markets, because these customers now have more discretionary income, and naturally they would be more likely to spend. And that is why the study of rural marketing becomes very, very important for you, because unless you know the nuances involved in rural marketing, you would not be able to make good use of this particular opportunity. Again, one more thing that has been witnessed in the last few years is even the aspiration levels have been rising in the rural markets. There have been instances of people purchasing, for example, SUVs in rural markets. There was a case study wherein a family which was compensated for their land. The land was actually taken away for purpose of construction of some highway. So they were compensated for the land, and this was a case of a particular village somewhere near Pune, and most of the families utilized that particular amount, a portion of that particular amount, to buy SUVs like Bolero and Scorpio. So this is the kind of increase in the level of aspirations. The aspirations of the people, of those living in the rural areas, of the rural customers, they are also increasing, which means now as a marketer I have greater opportunity to sell more number of my products to these customers. Now this becomes a very, very important reason for us to study rural marketing. The competition in rural markets is much, much less intense. The reasons are very, very simple. We would find out in the discussions that will follow that it is, though rural markets are actually presenting you really attractive opportunities, but they are not easy to deal with. There are lots of challenges to be faced in the rural markets. There are a lot of constraints, and this deters a few of the marketers from entering the rural markets. I'll give an example. So many villages in India, they are still not reachable. You cannot access them. They are still not accessible by metalled roads, pakka roads. And generally, again, even if you somehow manage to reach the village, you would find that the dwellings are scattered, which means there's a lot of distance between one dwelling and the other, which means it does not remain cost effective for you to have a kirana shop in that particular village to supply goods to different families in that particular village. So again, since the roads are not motorable, it is also going to be difficult for you to distribute your products to that particular village. So all these constraints which are there in rural markets, they have deterred quite a number of marketers from entering the rural markets. And this in fact means that if you somehow happen to enter the rural market, you would not be facing the kind of competition that you have been facing in the urban markets. You would feel that the intensity of the competition is much, much less in rural markets, because naturally rural markets entail a lot of challenges, a lot of constraints. And this now becomes a really, really attractive option for the marketers who are looking to somehow increase their sales, who have already seen intense amount of competition in the urban markets. So it is easier for them to deal with the rural markets in this sense that the intensity of the competition is much, much less. And that is why once you get a foothold in the rural markets, you are likely to be very, very successful. Yes, it's going to be difficult for you to enter the rural market. There are constraints, just like there are constraints for your rivals, for the other competitors in the market. The constraints are there for you as well. But if somehow you are able to tackle those constraints overcome those constraints, tackle those challenges, and you somehow get a foothold in the rural markets, then naturally it is going to be really difficult for others to dislodge you, for your rivals to dislodge you, and you can earn a lot of revenue from your rural markets also. So these were the reasons why rural markets and rural marketing as a discipline has gained so much prominence in the last few years, and that is why this particular subject has now been included as part of your syllabus in the 6th semester. You have already studied the concepts of marketing. You know about the various theories and models and principles and different types of research studies that have taken in marketing, that have been done and published in marketing. So you know about those theories and models as well. Now in rural marketing, you will basically be looking at how to apply those theories, how to apply those models in the rural markets. We'll continue this discussion in the next and again the forthcoming video sessions. So till then, I would advise you to look for case studies, look for examples where firms have done exceedingly well in rural markets just by tapping at the opportunities that the rural markets present to them. Thank you very much.